Does the Old Testament of the Holy Bible reveal the location of the tomb of Alexander the Great of ancient Greece, who lived about 330 BC? Dr. Isaiah Costantinides writes, on the occasion of the recent archaeological discoveries in Amphipolis' tomb in northern Greece, many people have linked the issue of the royal tombs there with the place where the body of Alexander the Great is buried. Of course, research is ongoing, and it would be frivolous for someone to take a position so hastily on this issue, which, if confirmed, radically changes our perceptions of Greek and world history. Besides, we had made relevant publications about Amphipolis in the past, where we also remind you of the distillate column of issues. And amidst all this, on the internet, many remembered the prophecy of the prophet Daniel of the Old Testament from the Hebrew Bible, the Old Testament, which refers to the future king of Eurasia, the Macedonian Pantocrator, Alexander. And indeed, in chapter 7, as well as in the 8th and 9th, the prophet-inspired visions, the first and the second, are discussed respectively. In the first vision, Daniel refers to the worldly kingdoms and the kingdom of God, while in the second vision, he foretold the symbolic battle of the ram and the goat. The archangel Gabriel revealed this to him, as you'll read in the prophet Daniel of the Old Testament, in the book of Daniel. Now, but we had already spoken about this February 2012, he says, long before the issue of the tomb of Amphipolis came to the surface and became public, as well as all these online articles about Daniel's visions of Alexander the Great. And then with our front page in the Greek newspaper under the title, Prophet Daniel, Alexander the Great, and Revelation of John of the New Testament. Note the text is also available in its entirety in our work, Alexander the Great, the Greatest of the Greeks, published by Eleftheria Ora. And we wrote the following very important things, and we quote the entire article. Undoubtedly, one of the main historical sources that speak of Alexander the Great and can be used as an argument by the Greek side for the Greekness of Macedonia is the Jewish religious tradition. In the Jewish Old Testament, this collection of the sacred books of the Jewish people, which were accepted by both Christian and Muslims, there is a clear reference to Alexander the Great and his kingdom, which took the form of an empire and gave Hellenism its planetary dimension, Pan-Hellenism. And very rightly, the former minister Nicholas Martis wrote his classic and award-winning work of the Academy of Athens entitled The Falsification of the History of Macedonia, in which, through Jewish sources and testimonies about Macedonia, the Greek character of the region is proven. And here we should note that although the Greek state, as well as Greek individuals, followed this tactic of march and did not exhaust their energy in senseless conspiracy of the type, blaming some people for everything, today, no Skopje resident or anyone else would even dare to raise the issue of Macedonian ethnicity separate from Greek, and the Macedonian language, an unredeemed Macedonia of the Aegean, etc. Because the goal of every nation is not to invent non-existent enemies, but to dynamically defend its own history and national territorial integrity, and of course to use to its advantage anything that is useful to it, wherever it comes from. At least that is what the diplomacy and tactics of smart states apply. So let's see what the Old Testament says, which also deifies Alexander the Great, proving his Greekness. It writes in the book of Maccabees 1:1-10, the following. The rendering in modern Greek comes from the above-mentioned book by Nicholas Martis. Alexander, the son of Philip the Macedonian, after his victory against the Persians, where he defeated Darius, king of the Persians and the Medes, rushed out of the land of the Hittites and reigned in his place in those countries after he had previously become king of all Greece, and the entire then known world submitted to him, and the earth became calm from wars. He became the ruler of countries, nations, and kings, After this, however, he fell ill on his bed and felt that he was going to die. He called to him his glorious companions who had been with him since his youth, and divided his kingdom while he was still alive. Antiochus became king in the 137th year of the king of the Greeks, the Seleucids. And Nicholas Martis writes the following very important things about the above Old Testament Jewish Hebrew referencing his book. The projection of the work of Alexander the Great at the time, that is, approximately 150 years after his death, and especially in the books of Maccabees 1, is of great importance. The Maccabee brothers were heroes of the Jews in their struggles against the successors of Alexander the Great. They opposed King Antiochus the Great, who was pressuring the Jews to embrace the gods of Greece. Antiochus had ordered a statue of Zeus to be placed opposite the temple of the Jews and sacrifices to be made to Zeus. Equally impressive, with eschatological end times dimensions, is the reference to Alexander the Great in the Maccabees by the Hebrews prophet Daniel, who had seen an impressive vision described in the book of the Old Testament, Daniel chapter 8, verse 1 to 22. Note, the rendering in modern Greek is again from the above-mentioned book by Nicholas Martis. In the 3rd year of the reign of Belshazzar, a vision appeared to me, Daniel. I was in Susa by the river of Ubal. I lifted up my eyes and looked, and behold, a ram was standing by the river of Ubal, and the horns were high, one higher than the other. No beast could stand before it. And behold, a male goat running very swiftly and seemingly not touching the ground. The male goat had a conspicuous horn between its eyes, and it ran with great speed. It came and struck the ram and broke its 2 horns, and there was no power in the ram to stand before it. The male goat became very great and very glorious, but when it reached its great power, its large horn was broken, and then 4 other horns grew up in its place towards the 4 corners of the earth. I, Daniel, when I saw the vision, was pondering and trying to understand its meaning. Behold, one stood by me, and I heard a man's voice coming from between the river Ubal, and he said, Gabriel, explain the vision to him, and I will make known to you what will happen to you. The ram that you saw is the king of the Medes and Persians. The male goat is the king of the Greeks. The large horn that is between its eyes is the first king of the Greeks. The 4 other horns that sprouted instead of it indicate 4 kings who will emerge from this nation, but not as long as he, the first king, remains in power. The interpretation of the above verses of the Old Testament from the book of the prophet Daniel is more than clear for someone who has historical knowledge. It is therefore very clear that the first and great king mentioned is none other than Alexander the Great himself, whose kingdom, the Great Horn, was broken, and the 4 kingdoms of his successors known to us from history emerged. And therefore the beginning of the decline of Hellenism of planetary dimensions and the shrinkage of the global dominance of the Greeks through imperial Pan-Hellenism. Here it is really worth noting that the revelation of John of the New Testament is directly influenced and connected to the book of the prophet Daniel. The entire setting of the last book of the Holy Bible follows entirely in the footprints of Daniel's model, with the beasts and horns, etc., elements that St. John used as symbols in order to describe future historical events. Another striking connection that exists between the stories about ancient Macedonia and apocalyptic times is the reference in the revelation of John to Armageddon. Armageddon is analyzed according to one interpretation as Armageddon, land of the Macedonians. Note, Ar is the ancient Greek root word of land. Even in the Latin alphabet, the Greek letter Y, the 3rd in the alphabetical order, is replaced by C, and thus Macedonia emerges. Amazing indeed, because it's truly impressive that the last events are directly related to the Greek area, and indeed in Macedonia, this eternal apple of discord for many and sundry. So we wrote this February 2012, that is over many years ago. Fortunately, some online researchers have now discovered the correlation between Daniel's prophecy and Alexander the Great, even if it was on the occasion of the archaeological finds discovered in the Amphipolis tomb area. It's never too late. It would be good, however, when they copy us to also mention their sources, hence the text of the writer in the newspaper, eleftheri ora, for ethical reasons. The research continues and will bring to light many shocking facts. Let everyone keep this in mind. After all, our era will be full of upheavals on many and various levels. It seems that the great moment is approaching, and those who are ready to already listen to the unique emotion brought by the vibrations of the great change that is coming. Please leave your comments, and thank you for your support. Please support my Patreon account. The daily posts are 5 videos daily, and they are totally different from what I have on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your support and that you find all my content so interesting. You'll find the Patreon account details in the description box below.